Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday I get together with students and share teachings with them to help them build a foundation on the path to enlightenment. We just restarted this program about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Today's topic is the 4 Stages of Enlightenment and the 10 Fetters. You're going to understand what these are because the Buddha taught these 10 fetters, which are essentially pollutions in the mind. And when you understand what they are and the tools and techniques to eliminate them, your mind will actually move through the 4 stages of enlightenment, where the mind will ultimately experience enlightenment. What enlightenment is it's a mental state that you're experiencing in this life, where you've completely eliminated all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated from the mind. The mind will be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And this is a permanent mental state that you can attain. But you need to know the foundational teachings and how to actually acquire this mental state. You would need guidance from a teacher to be able to guide you along this path. So that's what I do, is I'm essentially like a tour guide, helping students to understand what it takes to be able to move the mind to this enlightened mental state, providing you all the resources and the ability to do that at no cost, whether it's books or videos, podcasts, personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats. Everything's available to you to be able to learn and grow and develop on this path to be able to experience this enlightened mental state. So welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. We're going to start our class with a meditation. That's how we start each one of our classes. I'm going to be chanting to ease us into the meditation, and you guys are welcome to chant along if you'd like. I have the chants that I'm doing on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a laminated sheet and chant along if you'd like. For those of you guys that are online, you can get this chanting sheet by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. Click on free books, and then down towards the bottom you'll be able to see the chanting sheet, and you're welcome to chant along with us. So I see that you guys are handing out the chanting sheets. That's great, so that you guys can have them and chant along if you'd like. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. That every 2 weeks his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, because they didn't have the ability to write things down during his lifetime. That technology didn't exist in that region of the world. So chanting started as just purely as a learning device to be able to help them commit the teachings to memory so that they could then practice the teachings. So you can see from the origins of chanting, this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. In fact, I don't think the Buddha probably even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because when you read the chants, there's a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And the Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, here, chant these chants for me, out of respect for me, right? This would be ego. This would be arrogance. And an individual who's gotten to enlightenment wouldn't have that. So I'm sure that the Buddha didn't create these chants himself. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger and the sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I suspect that these actually came from his students, either during his life or after his death. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to as we ease into meditation, because it actually helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation as you're easing the mind into the meditation. It brings awareness to the mind and awareness to the breath, helping you to get more benefit. After the chanting, you're going to hear me come in with some guidance where I'll be instructing you and guiding you in the meditation while we're actually doing it. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here and everyone online will just be meditating at the same time. Now, I imagine you're going to hear an occasional sound while we're actually meditating. You might hear a car going by, a bird chirping, a dog barking. This is completely normal. This is all impermanence. You're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible. So when you hear those sounds, you can just understand this is the way the world functions, that things arise, they change, and they fade away. They're completely normal. If your mind craves permanent quietness during meditation, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated during the meditation. So you can understand that this is just completely normal, that there's an occasional sound. No matter where you meditate, there's going to be occasional sounds, and you can just reside peaceful and joyful during that time frame. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand the 4 stages of enlightenment and the 10 fetters. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because it's kind of like creating a tool belt, and you would need these different positions at different times. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position just to help you get started. You can be sitting on the floor, you could sit in a chair, you can really sit however you're comfortable. There's not just one way to sit. Maybe if you're at home, you're on the sofa or a bench or in a wheelchair or something like this, you can really sit however you like. So I'll just give you some things to consider that'll maybe help you find something even more comfortable than where you're already sitting. If you're on the floor, usually people will use some cushions to kind of soften their seat. This will kind of help you to sit more comfortably on the floor. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just decide to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. So that might be an option that you consider as well. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way, because you may or may not find that to be comfortable. There's other options as well. You could put your palms on your thighs or your knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands in your arms wherever you're comfortable. And the same thing goes for anyone sitting in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then with your hands and arms, you can also put those wherever you like. It's helpful if the upper body is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session. You're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind, and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you would like the mind to be attentive and alert during this training. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. It also makes it easy to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Because if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull and lethargic, and it'd be kind of challenging to breathe. But if you were real rigid, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the upper body in the middle with the sternum up and shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert and make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll be back in with some guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro purisa Dhamma sati satatava manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวาพุทธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'm going to once again welcome all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Nice to see everyone here this morning. As I was sharing, what I do here is help people to understand the path to enlightenment, and we have various programs and various courses and retreats to be able to help you to do that. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can get it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. Today is the last day before I start from chapter 1, because what we do at the beginning of this program is we kind of have this overview where we go deeply into some of the very core and central teachings of the Buddha. And then next week on Sunday, I'm going to start from chapter 1. Today's topic is all about the 4 stages of enlightenment and the 10 fetters, because so far what I've done in this program is I've taught the Eightfold Path in 3 individual sections. I taught this core central teaching of the Buddha that's going to guide you to this enlightened mental state. If you're practicing that closely, it's going to lead you to what's referred to as the jhanas, which are enhanced qualities of mind. And then as you're experiencing the jhanas, you will move past those into the 4 stages of enlightenment. So I'm going to explain to you what these 4 stages are. What's happening when you're training your mind with the Eightfold Path is you're working to eliminate these pollutions, the 10 fetters. What the Buddha did during his lifetime is he discovered these 10 pollutions in the mind and how to actually uproot them. He provided the tools and techniques that it took for him to be able to uproot these pollutions. He shared it with people from the age of 35 to 80. There were countless people that were learning with him and figured out, just like he did, how to eradicate these. But he needed to teach people what he did in order to get to this enlightened mental state. Not only is the mind completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy by the time you get to enlightenment and you've eliminated all those discontent feelings that I mentioned earlier, like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. But also when you uproot these 10 pollutions, the mind's going to be performing optimally. So you'll notice that the mind is focused, it has concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. You're not being aggressive and irritated and annoyed when the people around you are doing things that you disagree with. You'll get to the point where your mind is completely at ease in all these relationships. You'll notice that you don't even have a bad mood any longer, that it's physically impossible to be able to have a bad mood because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing that. It's these 10 fetters that are producing it. Oftentimes people think that what's causing their anger and their frustration is something external, and now you go around the world maybe pushing people away out of your life. You might have done this where when you get angry, you attribute those feelings to something external and you push those people away, or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to them through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, or you might put expectations on people, trying to control them and forcing them and pressuring them to do things your way. But you can see that that hasn't led to peace and joy because your mind is still experiencing these discontent feelings. And it's because these pollutions are in the mind. So the Buddha shares with you the tools and techniques of how to uproot them. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that you would need in order to uproot these pollutions. And then as you're experiencing the jhanas, which are these enhanced qualities of mind, then you start to pivot and you start focusing more directly on eliminating these 10 fetters. There are different times in the various programs that I teach. I help you to understand what these jhanas are and how you know that you're actually experiencing them. But in a beginning program like this, I start you off with the Eightfold Path, helping you to understand what that is so that you can implement it and start experiencing the results in your day-to-day life. And then as we go through this program, you're going to learn various things that are going to help you to eliminate these 10 fetters. They were referred to as fetters because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were a prisoner and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball, and it would keep you confined to a certain area. So today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, but during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach this fetter to your ankle with this heavy ball, and they would just keep you in this field. And that's how they would keep you confined to a certain area. So when the Buddha discovered these 10 pollutions, he referred to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped and confined in experiencing this anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings over and over and over again. And it's when you eradicate these fetters or you eliminate them out of the mind that you're now free. Just like a prisoner would be free when they release the fetter, you would be free. Your mind is now free of carrying around the burden of having to experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. This process of eliminating the 10 fetters and getting to enlightenment, it happens through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's not instantaneous. You do this through learning, examining, and investigating the teachings. You then reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and actually transforming your mind and uprooting these pollutions. So there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is based in belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're also not doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and prayer. If you've done these kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, that's actually not what the Buddha taught. But now, 2,500 years after his death, people have oftentimes changed his teachings, and you'll see these kinds of things kind of embedded in some of the communities that people teach in. The Buddha didn't share rules and commandments for people to follow. Instead, he's having you to understand the need to cultivate wisdom and actively train your mind by understanding the world around you. So I'm going to help you to understand what these 10 fetters are. I'm going to explain to you what they are. I'm going to explain to you some of the symptoms that you're going to experience because of these so that you can independently verify that you have these fetters. I'm going to share in some cases a little bit about how to actually eliminate them. And then that's kind of like what I'll be sharing with you on each of these individual fetters. There's a retreat that I teach in August. It's called The Purification of the Mind to Attain Enlightenment, where I spend about an hour to an hour and a half on each one of these fetters. We have one class on each individual fetter. This particular class at the beginning of this program is just to help students to be aware of what these fetters are, and then understanding that this is kind of what's underneath of all the teachings of the Buddha, helping you to be able to eradicate these 10 fetters. As we go in our class, you're welcome to ask any and all questions, whether you're here or you're online. If you're here and you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl. You just get a microphone, press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on. Just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can just keep these microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, then we won't get any feedback through the speakers. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom and you'd like to ask questions, you can put that into the comment section and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and throughout the live stream. So first, just to help you understand these fetters and then going through them in detail, there's lower fetters and then there's something called higher fetters. We're going to walk through each one of these, and then we're going to talk about the 4 stages of enlightenment, because it's when you're eliminating these 10 fetters that your mind is actually moving through these 4 stages of enlightenment. So these lower fetters are these 5 here. The first one is called personal existence view. What this is where the mind is confused and it has misunderstanding, thinking that this body or this mind is you, who you are as a person. The mind is clinging to the self-image or the self-identity. And now if you have agreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body or mind about this particular being, in terms of this body or this mind, you will experience pleasant feelings if you have this agreeable contact. But if you have disagreeable contact, you will experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. I'll give you some examples. If you've ever spilt anything on your clothing where you were maybe in a social situation and you experienced embarrassment, that's because of your personal existence view, because the mind is clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when you're being perceived that way, you feel happy or excited. And when you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, then the mind experiences anger, or frustration, or maybe embarrassment, or some other discontent feeling where the mind is unstable, unsteady, or shaken up. So if you've ever spilt anything on your clothing and you felt embarrassed, this is your personal existence view. If you ever looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or mole or maybe a wrinkle or a gray hair or something like this, and you were shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are as a person, and now wanting to be perceived in a certain way, you can only be happy if you're being perceived that way. And if you're not being perceived that way, you'll be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. If you've ever stood in front of your closet and maybe thought about, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? What clothes do I want to wear? How do I want those people to see me? And then maybe you put on some clothes and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not it. And then you put on some other clothes. No, that's not it. And you put on some other, okay, now I got it. Now I can go outside. I feel comfortable to go outside now because now I will be perceived the way I want to be perceived. This is the mind's personal existence view. Or maybe you were like me when I was a kid, when I was growing up as a teenager. I used to get the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair. I would stand in front of the mirror before going to school, trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. And I couldn't go outside to school unless every little hair was in exactly the right spot. And I would do this so long sometimes that I would actually miss the school bus on the way to school, right? So this is the personal existence view, the mind clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and it can only feel comfortable if it's being perceived the way it wants to be perceived. Then there's something called self-identity, where the mind can cling to identity inside your own mind about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, anything that the mind can cling to with this I am. Like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am Brazilian, or I am Ecuadorian, or I'm Canadian, or I am a Brit, or I am Aussie, or I am French, or I am Italian. This would be like around your nationality. But it could be about maybe your job or occupation too. Like maybe I am a Buddhist teacher, even though this isn't a job. It's something that I choose to do to be able to help you guys. But someone might cling to that, right? Like I am an accountant, or I am a tax taxi driver. I am a food server. Or maybe I am a police officer, right? And now, as long as an individual has that certain role intact, like maybe I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, or I'm a husband, or I'm a wife. And now, as long as you're in a relationship, you feel great. It's like, wow, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. But then when you guys break up, now you're single, and the mind doesn't identify with I am single. And now you might want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. The mind feels like, that's the way to solve this, because I feel uncomfortable over here being single, because the mind's identifying with I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. And now the individual might want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. Or say you were a police officer, and now you identify with I am a police officer. That's the identity that your mind is holding on to. And now when you're in that job, you feel great. But then maybe you get injured and you can't do it anymore. Or maybe you retire. Or maybe you get fired. And now you're a taxi driver. And the mind doesn't identify that way. And now it's frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or say maybe you identify with I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Chinese, or any of this nationality that your mind might be holding on to. Maybe you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, they're saying all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I haven't ever heard that before, but that could be something that somebody might say, right? And now if you identify that way, it's like, wow, they're talking about me, right? You feel so great about that. But now 2 tables over, somebody else is saying something degrading or disparaging about where you come from, right? All Americans are blah, 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 right? Well, now if you identify that way, you're frustrated, you're agitated because they're talking about me, right? But they're not talking about me. They're just talking about their opinions and views on people who come from that country. But if you identify and hold on and cling in your mind to this identity of who you think you are, now your mind will be shaken up by this. I'll give you another example of this. One time I had a student contact me that had been studying with me for a while. And they said, hey, David, I'm having a really hard time. I was like, yeah, what's going on? They're like, ever since COVID, I keep going into these places that I normally go into, like getting a coffee, for example. And normally I just give them cash and they take my money and I get my coffee and I'm gone. But, they, since COVID, have this contactless payment system where they turn around a computer screen and I have to kind of tap my card. And when I do, it says tip 20%, 25%, 28%, whatever it is, and I don't tip. And I feel really uncomfortable. I am a great tipper, David, but for some reason, when I go into these restaurants, I feel uncomfortable because I don't tip, because I spend 30 seconds ordering my coffee and I don't feel like I should have to tip, but I don't tip. So therefore I feel uncomfortable and I don't understand why. Why is it that I feel uncomfortable? I am a great tipper. And I was like, that's your personal existence view. Your mind's clinging to the identity that I am a great tipper. And when you're tipping, you feel great because you're being perceived in the way that you want to be perceived. But when you're not tipping, your mind doesn't feel comfortable with that, right? So the mind can cling to any number of things as who you think you are as a person and your identity. So the mind will cling with this personal existence view to a self-image and a self-identity, the body and the mind, thinking that this is who you are. And the Buddha provides a solution to this. He explains to you that there is no self, that this body is not you, this mind is not you, it's not who you are as a person. But as long as your mind clings to it, thinking that this is who you are, then in some situations you'll be happy, and in some situations you'll be angry and sad or frustrated or annoyed. And you can't get to permanent peace and permanent joy as long as your mind's clinging to any of this stuff as being who you are as a person. So it's a matter of being able to understand that there is a body, there's a physical body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, but you don't need to identify with it as who you are as a person. Even our choices and decisions, sometimes people can cling to their choices and decisions as who they are as a person. If you've ever used, say, drugs or alcohol in the past, you might have been taught that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. Well, that's not true. You made choices in the past to use substances, but that doesn't define who you are today. And of course, people teach this so that you never go back to using drugs and alcohol. And that's really helpful to never go back to use drugs and alcohol. But if your mind clings to this identity of who you think you are, like I am an addict or I am an alcoholic, you might actually feel guilty or shameful to a certain degree. But you don't have to cling to that as who you are. You can just understand that in the past, You made decisions to use drugs and alcohol, but that doesn't define who you are today. Just like this body, you can understand that this body was born on a certain land that might be referred to, in my case, as America, but I don't have to identify with that as who I am as a person, because it's just a label that that land has today, and it hasn't always been labeled that, and it won't always be labeled that. That is all going to change. So if we cling to any of this as who we are, then we get frustrated or agitated or annoyed, or sometimes people feel lost or incomplete or unwhole. Sometimes people have this personal existence view so bad that they might get to the point where they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know my true self. I need to go to Thailand and find myself. Or I might need to go to South America to find myself, find my true self. Well, they're not going to find themselves here in Thailand, right? They're not going to find themselves anywhere else because there is no self. Someone might come to Thailand, find new hobbies, new activities, new friends, maybe a new job or something like this. And they might go back to their home country and be like, yay, I found myself. I know who I am again, right? But then 5 years later, when all that stuff changes, they don't know who they are anymore because all this stuff is going to change. So as long as you cling to any of this stuff as who you are as a person, your mind's going to experience discontentedness. So this is the first fetter that the Buddha is helping you to understand what is personal existence view. And it needs to be eradicated from the mind. And there's various tools and techniques to be able to eradicate it. But it starts with the Eightfold Path. That's why I taught that already in this program, because you need that in order to be able to help you kind of soften up the mind and prepare it to be able to eliminate this personal existence view. So maybe you've already seen through just the description of what personal existence view is that, yeah, your mind has this potentially, right? You can see some of these examples that you experience, and this is the reason why, and you understand why you're experiencing discontentedness. But you'll need to implement the Eightfold Path to help you eradicate all of these, and then slowly but surely there's other teachings that target each one of these individually, and you're going to learn those over the course of this program and other programs that I share. And I also taught earlier, I taught about 3 weeks ago, how to independently verify this, that there is no self. So I taught this to help you guys to understand how to look inward and see that, yeah, this body is not you. It's not who you are. One of the things that I teach you is to think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about your character, your personality. Has it been exactly the same through those 4 stages of your life, or has it been constantly changing how you view yourself? It's been constantly changing, right? Another way that I share this with people is I say, if your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Shaking your head, no. Are you less of a person? You say no. You're not less of a person, right? So intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. Because if your arm is amputated, you only have one hand and one arm, and I said, are you less of a person now? And you say, no, I'm not less of a person. Then right there, you understand intellectually this body is not you. But when personal existence view is in your mind, you're confused. That's what I was sharing at the beginning. I said what this is where the mind's confused and has misunderstanding, that it thinks that this body or this mind is you. Because intellectually, you might understand this body is not you, but in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something negative or degrading about this body, that's where your confusion kicks in and you get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You might be ready to fight, right? And then I share another one. I say, point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Nobody's pointing. Maybe nobody has personal existence view. Eamon's pointing here. He said, I'm here, right? So that's commonplace. People will point to their head or they'll point here, right? They'll say, I am here. You need to look at what you're pointing to. You're pointing to a shirt, right? Ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt you got on? If we took off that shirt and held it up and pointed to it, is that you? That shirt that you're wearing? It's not you, right? Okay, so let's throw that away. Where are you? So I might point again. Okay, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin. Is that you? That skin that you've got? Is that who you are? That's not you, right? If we ripped off the skin and we held it up and pointed to it, is that you? No, that's not you. So let's throw that away. Where are you? Someone might point again, right? We've got bones and muscle tissue and organs and fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you, but the mind's going to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. So all throughout our life, our mind in the unenlightened state has been conditioned to think that these things are you, right? In our countries that we grew up in, we have sports teams, we have flags, national anthems. People cheer for these sports teams, right? Because this is who you are as a person and this is your nationality. You've been given a label at birth. I don't know all of your labels, but mine was David, right? That was my label, right? We've all got these labels and now we assign this personality and this character to who we think we are as a person. And now our mind gets very confused going through life because we've adopted this conditioning or this belief or this confusion that this is who we are. And you can strip all that away, getting to the point where you realize there is a body, there is a mind. This body was born on a certain land, but the mind doesn't have to identify that way. So if someone says, all Americans are so lovely and kind and warm and gentle or whatever they say, okay, well, they're not talking about me, right? That's not who I am, right? Or they say something degrading and disparaging about Americans or Buddhist teachers or anything like that. Okay, they're not talking about me because there's no me here. There's just a body and there's just a mind. But you need to strip all that away and get to the point where you're unaffected by what people say or do related to this body. Okay, so this is personal existence view. Then there's something called doubt. This is another fetter in the mind, and this can hinder you from getting to enlightenment because any of these fetters being in the mind, they will actually block somebody or obstruct somebody from actually getting to enlightenment. What doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha and their ability to attain enlightenment. And this is very common, just like personal existence view, that you have personal existence view in your mind, you most likely have doubt in your mind too, depending on how long you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha, right? That you might doubt the Buddha, the teachings. You might doubt the community that you're part of. You might doubt your teacher and the person's ability to help you get to enlightenment. Or you might doubt your own ability to get to enlightenment. You might think, I can't do that. That's for other people. It's not for me, right? So if you have doubt in your mind, it will hinder you from getting to enlightenment. It's a pollution of the mind, right? So the way that you eliminate this doubt from the mind is you investigate the teachings of the Buddha. You don't get rid of your doubt through blind belief or faith, because you heard what I shared. There is no blind belief. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever. You're learning, examining, and investigating the teachings. And when you're doing that, you start to reflect on the teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. So like when I was talking about personal existence view, I was helping you to be able to see that it's true, that your mind actually has this by giving you examples. So you start reflecting on the teachings, but then you start practicing his teachings. More and more as you're practicing his teachings, you're going to see that they work. Because there's certain situations that you get angry, you get frustrated, you get annoyed in those situations. But then when you start training your mind with the Buddha's teachings and you start having those same experiences, but you're not annoyed, you're not frustrated, your mind's quite peaceful and joyful, you're going to know that it's these teachings that are working to help you be able to get to enlightenment. By the time you get rid of your doubt, you won't be enlightened yet, but you'll be well on your way and you will have seen a significant improvement. You'll get to the point where you have confidence in the Buddha. You'll have confidence in his teachings. You'll have confidence in this community that you're part of. You'll have confidence in your teacher because that individual has guided you to be able to experience those improvements. And you'll have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment because you're actually doing it. You're actually seeing the actual improvement to the condition of your mind. So the way you get rid of doubt is through investigation and examination of the teachings. You don't believe anything in the teachings of the Buddha. So you don't believe what I share. You don't believe what I write in these books. You don't believe what anyone else shares. The Buddha never said, just believe me. He said just the opposite. He said, come, examine my teachings. Come, investigate my teachings. Because he knew if you investigate his teachings close enough, you're going to see that they're true. It's just a matter of time, right? So if you learn and grow and develop on the path, eventually you'll get rid of this doubt through examining and investigating the teachings, and you'll have nothing but confidence. Then there's this third one, which is called wrong behavior and observances. There's kind of two aspects to this. The wrong behavior part is a certain moral conduct that you're involved in right now that is unwise and it's harmful. And as you're putting out that moral conduct, that harm is going to come back to you. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we feel justified in speaking bitter and harsh and hostile to people, or certain actions that we might have. We might feel we're justified in that because our mind is confused and we think this anger and frustration within your own mind is coming from the other person. And you might feel justified in your bitterness and harshness and hostility, but it's not coming from other people. It's actually coming from your own mind. So your moral conduct, as long as you're bitter and harsh and hostile with people, that's all just going to come back to you. So how could you get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life if you've got this constant bitterness and harshness and hostility coming back to you in life? It doesn't matter how much you meditate. If you go out in the world and you're bitter and harsh and hostile, you're not anywhere close to enlightenment, because when you're putting out that bitterness and harshness and hostility, it's just all going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you in the Eightfold Path moral conduct. And what he's teaching you is not anything that like rules or commandments or anything. He's teaching you the natural law of cause and effect, that when you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful to people, for example, that then you'll experience that coming back to you. So he teaches you right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is your moral conduct to be able to improve the way you interact in the world, that you're not causing harm through your speech, your actions, or your livelihood. Because as long as you're putting out harm, this harm will come back to you. So it's kind of like if you had an oil pipe and it was broke and it was spewing oil all over the world, you would like to shut that down as soon as possible so that you're not harming the world, right? So it's the same thing, that you would like to shut down this unwise and unwholesome moral conduct so that you're not spewing all this harm into the world, because it's just going to come back to you. So when you bring your practice up to the level of the Eightfold Path that the Buddha teaches, then your mind has eliminated wrong behavior. So, for example, in right speech, you've got eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. That's the level of conduct that you would need to eliminate in order to eliminate this in terms of your speech or your communication. When we talked about the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which is speaking the truth, speaking at the proper time, speaking the truth, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness, that's a deeper level of teaching. But just to get rid of the wrong behavior here, you would need to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, because those are all based in craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. In right action, the Buddha teaches to eliminate killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And it's the 5 precepts that's going to help you to be more informed about what that is. And I'm going to be teaching that when we get to chapter 7. You'll see the words of the Buddha related to this important teaching. So you would need to eliminate those from your practice, and then making sure that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, because anytime you put out harm through your bodily actions, harm is going to come back to you. And then the Buddha teaches right livelihood. He teaches to not have a livelihood in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, because whenever you're doing those things, you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others, because each one of those livelihoods is going to cause harm to other beings. And then he teaches you how to perform your livelihood in a way that you'll be very successful at it. He teaches you to eliminate scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. And I went through these in a lot of detail 2 weeks ago so people would understand what these are. So once you've accomplished those things, you've eliminated wrong behavior. What wrong observances is, this is where an individual might think that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are going to produce some kind of benefit in their life. And they might be doing these things on a regular basis, not understanding that that's actually not going to produce enlightenment. So if someone was doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, or thinking in their mind that these things are going to actually produce better results in your life, their mind still has confusion, because it's not the rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that is going to produce any kind of benefit in your life. It's the cultivation of wisdom. So whether someone does these things or not, it's up to them. Each individual makes choices for themselves, but If an individual thought in their mind that these things are actually going to produce beneficial results, they're not understanding the underlying problem that the Buddha discovered, which is called the unknowing of true reality, or the lack of wisdom, which we're going to talk about towards the end. So maybe you're together with your family, and maybe they're going to the church or the synagogue or the temple or the mosque or something like this. And it's like maybe you know in your mind that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't actually lead to any beneficial results, but maybe you're going out on this event with your family and you guys are just all hanging out. Yeah, no worries. That's what you're choosing to do. But in your mind, you might have eliminated this portion of the fetter where you understand that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't lead to an improved condition of mind, that this is just something that people believe in, but it's not actually the truth. So you need to be able to get to that point where you see that for yourself. And oftentimes people have already eliminated that portion of the fetter before they ever come and study with me, because they know that I don't do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. So they know that, hey, they've done those things maybe other places, they've experienced them. They can see that their life is just as challenging before doing those rituals as afterwards. They still experience anger and frustration. There's nothing about those rituals that are going to improve the condition of your mind. So oftentimes people have already eliminated that one before they've even come to study with me. So by eliminating wrong behavior and wrong observances, the mind understands that there's this inner work that you need to do within your own mind. It's not about these rituals that are going to produce any kind of beneficial results. It's about improving the way you make decisions in the world, about the way that you interact in the world. It's about making wiser and wiser choices through the cultivation of wisdom, and then implementing those decisions in a wise way within your day-to-day life. And the cultivation of that wisdom comes through the learning, the reflection, and the practice of the teachings. So this is wrong behavior and observances. Then we've got central desire. What central desire is inside the mind, there's this pollution or this fetter where the mind is longing, yearning for permanently agreeable contact through the 6 sense bases. What the 6 sense bases are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. The mind craves, longs, and yearns, has this central desire where it wants agreeable contact through these sense spaces. And when you have agreeable contact, you experience pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when you experience disagreeable contact through these sense spaces, that's when you experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things like this. So I'll give you some examples of this. We'll start with the eyes. Say you're walking down the street and you see a child holding their parent's hand. You might be like, that's so beautiful. Look at that young child holding their parent's hand, walking down the street. Oh, I feel so pleasant about that. I feel maybe you're happy about that based on the condition of having this agreeable contact through the eyes. But now maybe you turn the corner and you walk down the street and you see a parent slap their child across their face. Oh my goodness, right? You might be shocked by this. You might be frustrated or angry. Well, it's not that person that's causing that frustration or anger. It's your central desire. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because in my opinion, it's unwise to hit anybody, especially a child. But we're not talking about what's wise or unwise in this situation. What we're talking about is what's causing you to be frustrated in that situation. Well, it's the mind's central desire. It wants to see things that are permanently agreeable to you. And you can't experience that. You live in an impermanent world. Sometimes you're going to see things you agree with, and sometimes you're going to see things that you disagree with, because this world doesn't function according to you. It functions based on the natural laws. And the more you understand that the world is impermanent, and it's not possible for the world to function with permanence, then you'll understand that sometimes you're going to see things you agree with, and sometimes you're going to see things that you disagree with. And you don't need to form you don't need to form feelings based on those things. You don't need to be angry or sad or frustrated just because you see something that's disagreeable to you, right? But with your central desire, your mind will form those conditioned feelings. Let's do another example with the ears. Say you're driving in a car and you're at a stoplight and someone pulls up to you with a certain music that you find agreeable. You might be dancing in your seat, right? You might be having a good old time hearing this music because it's agreeable to you. You're hearing a sound that's agreeable. But now you pull up to the next traffic light and there's a different type of music. Somebody pulls up with a different type of music and you don't like this music. You despise this music and now you're frustrated or agitated. This is the mind craving permanently agreeable contact, where you have this central desire in the mind. It's not the music or the person playing the music that's causing you to be angry or frustrated. It's your central desire. The mind's craving permanently agreeable contact when you're not going to be able to experience that. Let's just say you walk past a flower shop and you get an odor in the nose and it's like, wow, that's amazing, right? That's a great smell, right? But now you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer. Ugh, you're repulsed by the sewer, right? This is the mind's central desire. Now, if the mind is experiencing the flowers or maybe somebody's perfume or cologne, it's like, wow, such pleasant feelings. But that's not permanent. And if you cling to that, now when you smell the sewer, you will be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. It's your central desire. Same thing happens through the tongue. There might be certain foods that you really find agreeable to you, and you get pleasant feelings when you eat that. Maybe chocolate or ice cream or something like that, right? You get so happy or excited when you get that. But then there's certain foods that you dislike. Maybe like durian, right? I used to not like durian. I don't know if you guys know what this fruit is. In my opinion, it smells like poop, right? And I've never had poop in my mouth, but if you put poop in your mouth, I think it would be just like this fruit because the consistency of it is similar to poop, right? So I used to despise the durian fruit, right? So you're going to need to train your mind that you just look at food as something to nourish the body, that the food is not to please the tongue and to please the mind, because that might be how you're eating right now. There might be certain foods that you like and you're attracted to those and you tend to seek those out. And then there's certain other foods that you're repulsed by and you avoid them and you push them away. This is aversion. This is all from your central desire because you're not going to be able to eat food that's permanently agreeable to you. So if you have this favoring and opposing or this agreeable and disagreeable within your mind, that means you can only be happy when you're eating food that you like. And when you get this other food that you don't like, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So you're shrinking your ability to be happy all the time because you can only be happy when you get what you want, when you have agreeable contact through these sense bases. Same thing's happening with the body. There might be certain fabrics that you find to be very pleasing and you get happy when you wear those. But then there's other things of certain fabrics that you don't like, maybe wool or turtlenecks or something like this. Or maybe you're walking down the street and you're all by yourself and you've got lots of space and you feel so great. But the next thing you know, somebody bumps into you, bumps your shoulder. And now you're like, man, what's going on with you? What's wrong with you, right? Maybe now you're frustrated. Someone bumped into this body, right? Where you're not going to be able to walk in this world and never have anybody bump into you. There's too many beings around, right? And then there's the mind itself. The Buddha describes this as a sense base because you can actually form feelings now based on things from the past or in the future. You're not having any contact through the sense bases, but maybe your mind is just thinking about something that was pleasurable or painful in the past, and now you're forming feelings on it now, right? And as long as you're doing that, you can't get free. You can't get to peace and joy. So maybe you had something very challenging as a child that happened with you, right? And now maybe today you're forming feelings based on that, where you can eliminate that from the mind. Sometimes people call this trauma and they think they can never get over it because they've had some experience in the past that they'll never be able to get over. And this isn't actually true. You can train your mind to let this go and not form feelings based on it today. You'll always remember that these things happen, but you won't experience the anger and the frustration or the sadness and sorrow based on those things. And same thing with pleasurable things. You could have pleasurable things that happened in the past and you're longing, yearning for those things to happen again in the present moment. And now you're not content or peaceful in the present moment. And you can have the same thing about the future, where maybe you're longing, yearning to go on a certain trip, right? Maybe you're in a business meeting at work. There isn't any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or the body. It's just your mind thinking about this thing in the future, and you're getting all these pleasant feelings based on that. Or something painful. Maybe you're fearful or having anxiety about something in the future. So your mind hasn't had any contact through the sense bases. It's just within one's own mind that they're longing, yearning about the past or the future, and now you're experiencing either pleasant feelings or painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings in the present moment based on this aspect of the mind. So this is what central desire will do, is the mind will see things as agreeable and they will see it as disagreeable. It will be attracted to the agreeable and try to keep that and make it permanent, and then it will try to push away the disagreeable, not realizing that this doesn't solve the problem. The way you solve this is you uproot the central desire out of the mind. And the way to do that is through breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity. Because what your mind's doing here is you're holding on. You're holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. The mind can't let go. It's craving permanence. So the entire Eightfold Path is going to help you to eliminate central desire. But the two things that are targeting it is the breathing mindfulness meditation, which we did this morning, and practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. It trains your mind to let go, because your mind's holding on. If you think about that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with, when you guys first got together, you were so happy and so excited, right? You got all these pleasant feelings because you were getting what you wanted. But then over time, when you guys broke up, now you were frustrated or agitated, or you were bored or lonely, or you missed this person. This is because your mind was holding on. It hadn't let go. This central desire wasn't getting fulfilled. So when the mind wasn't getting what it wanted, that's when the boredom and loneliness or the anger or the frustration came in. So when you train your mind to let go, this is what's going to help you maintain your peace, that you don't grab on to these things, wanting them to be permanent, and you just understand that things are impermanent in your life. So there's a lot more to learn around central desire, but that just gives you a little bit of understanding. When your mind is, again, getting its central desires fulfilled, that's where the mind experiences happiness and excitement and elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when you're not getting what you want, when your central desires aren't getting fulfilled, that's where the painful feelings arise. And one of the things that can happen is your ill will can arise. Your ill will is your anger, your frustration, your agitation, your annoyance. And this can come through in your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and the way you interact with people around you. This is where you might have pushed people away out of your life, thinking that that was going to solve the problem, not realizing that the true problem was your central desire. Or you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, being unskillful and damaging relationships. Or you might have put your expectations on people and tried to pressure them to do things your way. And as long as the mind's having this ill will, you're not going to be able to reside with all beings harmoniously. So there's loving kindness meditation to be able to train your mind to uproot this ill will and essentially rewire the mind so that you can be loving and kind with all beings around you. But then you need to practice loving kindness through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to eliminating ill will. It's an important component, but you would need to go out into the world and be practicing loving kindness in your day-to-day life through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And this is what will transform the mind away from the ill will and get to the point where you can be loving and kind with all people around you, all beings. You will be able to be loving and kind with them. Where right now you might find that to be a challenge. There's probably certain people that you like and certain people that you dislike. Right? Where that's coming from is your central desire. The mind has certain wants and expectations, and it wants everybody to be this way. And when they're that way, you like them. But when they're not that way, you dislike them. But you can eliminate that through eliminating your central desire and then eliminate your ill will, understanding that everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to do things your way. And that's okay. All right, so this is the lower fetters. I'm going to stop here and see what questions you guys have before we go into the higher fetters. The higher fetters actually are a lot not easier, but they're more straightforward, I think. The lower fetters, like personal existence view, is a little bit more challenging for the mind to understand. So if you don't understand this from the beginning, it's okay. We're actually going to talk in chapter 16 about personal existence view in a lot more detail. But if you have any questions on these, you can use the microphones here. And those of you guys online, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. So it looks like Chris has a question.
Let's see. Okay, good. As you talk about the negative feelings, you've, of course, within the scope of those are shame and fear. And the Buddha, in some instances, talks about what's called wise shame and wise fear. Could you speak a little bit about that and the differentiation where you consider the shame or the fear that you're feeling to be wise and where it's unbeneficial?
Yeah, I would encourage you, if you're seeing anything that is reported to be from the Buddha where he's talking about wise shame or wise fear, that you share it with me so that I can help you, because there's probably an underlying translation that's a mistranslation, because he never talks about wise fear or wise shame, because anytime you experience that, it's actually the mind being discontent caused by craving, desire, attachment. So there might be someone who's translating it that way with a misunderstanding, because by the time you get to enlightenment, there is no shame, there is no fear whatsoever.
Okay, I appreciate that. I've heard it from many monastics. The terms, I know that you're not using Pali terms, but they're hiri and ottappa. And if you have an understanding what those might refer to, then I'd appreciate that.
I would need to look at the entire discourse to be able to see it. But there isn't such thing as wise shame or wise fear. What that might be translating is something called moral wrongdoing and moral concern. That's how I translate it. What moral wrongdoing is where you understand what is wise and unwise in terms of moral conduct. And then what moral concern is that you're concerned not to cause any kind of harm to other beings. Because some people translate this as moral guilt and moral shame. That might be what you're actually seeing. And different people will translate it different ways. I translate it as moral wrongdoing and moral concern, because you need to know what's wise or unwise about moral conduct. And then you need to have the concern not to cause harm in the world through your moral conduct. Because you can't cause other people to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. Harm would be like harming their material possessions, their physical body, their reputation. Whenever you cause harm, that harm is going to come back to you. So you don't have to worry about shame or guilt or fear, any of these kinds of things. If you eliminate the underlying cravings, desires, attachments, you won't experience any kind of shame or fear, any of that kind of stuff.
Experience fear, and I give some reflection as to why it's unbeneficial, why it's unwise, and what it actually may be. And I try and put it in a term that is helpful for myself. I consider that this is a aversion to an imagined future. Is that? Would you say that's accurate? Fear
is coming from craving, desire, attachment. There's some craving. So like if somebody craves to never see a spider, that's the permanence that the mind is craving with its central desire. And now if it doesn't see any spiders, it's happy. It feels good. It feels comfortable. But then when it sees a spider, it's experiencing impermanence, which the mind doesn't like, and now there's fear that comes up in the mind. So fear is coming from craving, desire, attachment, the wants and expectations, the mind's central desire. So whenever we talk about craving, desire, attachment, we're talking about central desire. Okay, we have a question here coming in on Zoom. Individual Melody is asking, will I be able to join the retreat in August online? Yes, we have that retreat. That is, everything that I do here at the temple is live streamed except for Friday night game night. We don't live stream our game night, that we have a social event, but everything else that we do here, we pretty much live stream it, Melody, so you'll be able to join that, no worries. Okay, let's see if we have any questions on Facebook. And we don't have any on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube. Okay, so let's go to the next 5 fetters. These are called the higher fetters. I'm going to talk about 6 and 7 together because they're very similar in nature. This is desire for form and desire for formless. What this is where you might have a craving or desire to exist in one of the form realms or formless realms. The form realms are the animal realm or the human realm. They have physical form. Like if you have a desire to be reborn as a bird or as a spider or a snake or some other animal like this, that's desire for form. Or if you're having a longing, yearning, clinging, and craving for this existence in the human realm, you want this to be permanent. Now the mind, as you get close to death, you're going to have fear, right? Because your mind wants this life to be permanent when in reality it is impermanent. So if you have a desire for form, you're not going to be able to get to permanent peace and permanent joy because you're holding on to this existence and maybe other existences in the future as a bird or a spider or whatever it is, and your mind can't let go and it doesn't understand the impermanent nature of existence. Or someone might have a desire for the formless realms. This is hell, afflicted spirits, which are ghosts, or a very common one is a desire to exist in heaven, right? There are beings who actually desire to be reborn in hell. There's some who desire to be in the ghost realm or in the heavenly realm. And if you have this desire to exist in these places, your mind hasn't let go and understood that all this is impermanent. So you need to get to the point where you understand that all these things are impermanent, constantly changing. You're not going to experience a permanent existence. As long as you're born, you're going to experience sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. And there's going to experience this. And you can get to the point where you've escaped that, where you experience enlightenment and the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. But if there is an existence, there is going to be these things that occur. There's going to be sickness, aging, death, and discontentedness associated with that. So if an individual has let go of desire for form and desire for formless, they're not craving existence to be in this world, but they're not craving non-existence either. They're not wanting to kill themselves, right? They're just completely content in the present moment. It's like, yeah, there's this human existence and I'm completely content and completely satisfied now in the present moment. Because the unenlightened mind is going to be longing, yearning. It always wants something that it doesn't have, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. That's the central desire that the mind has. So you need to get to the point where your mind's not doing that and you're completely content in the present moment. And by the time you've eliminated these fetters, you won't have any fear of death. And there's certain techniques that you can use to be able to do this. There's something called contemplation of death or reflection on death, which you'll learn at different times in the various programs that I share. Then there's something called conceit. This is the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being superior or inferior to other beings. This is coming from your animal existences, that when we were animals in the past, we had a very strong pecking order, that when we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male, who's the alpha female, because they're going to teach us how to hunt and how to survive and how to be better wolves. If we didn't know who our alpha male and alpha female were, we wouldn't have been able to learn how to hunt as wolves and survive. Or when we were a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd because she's showing us where the food is. She's showing us where the migration paths are. She's showing us where the watering holes are. If we didn't know who the matriarch of our elephant herd was, we wouldn't have survived as an elephant. We'd just be roaming and wandering without any clue of any of these kinds of things. So we needed a very strong pecking order in the animal realm in order to survive. But when we come into this human world, the mind tends to develop this conceit where we want this strong pecking order to know who's above us and who's below us. And maybe you talk differently and you interact with people differently. That maybe when you see yourself being above someone, you might talk down to them. But if you see yourself as below them, you might be shaken up and you're looking up to them with such awe. Maybe like your boss. If you go into your boss's office, maybe you're all shaken up by this, right? You're not feeling comfortable around this person. Or maybe when you see somebody outside, maybe sweeping the streets, maybe you look down on them, right? This is the mind's conceit. conceit. And as long as you're doing this measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people, in some cases, you're going to also put yourself below people, and you're going to feel uncomfortable and uncalm in those situations. And then your mind has to figure out, like in a social situation, if you've ever gone to a party and you're trying to figure out who's above me and who's below me, because you got to speak to one group of people one way and another group of people another way. This is very taxing for the mind. But when you get rid of this conceit and you just see everybody as equal, you don't have to do that. You can just treat everybody equally. If you see someone sweeping the streets outside, you might whine to that person and say, "Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?" Right? But if you see the king of Thailand walking down the street, "Good morning, sir." And maybe he's with the queen. "Good morning, ma'am. How are you?" You treat everybody equally. Your mind can be at ease because you just have one way of treating everybody. Polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, right? You just treat everybody the same. But as long as this conceit is in there, you can't do that. There's this pecking order that the mind's looking for, and you're going to be shaken up in certain situations. So there are certain tools and techniques to eliminate this out of the mind. We oftentimes refer to this with personal existence view as the ego. That's the way we refer to it now today as the ego, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, this word didn't exist. And he rightly separated these two into two different fetters because the symptoms are different and the ways to eliminate them are different. But we actually combine these two and refer to it as the ego. So when we get to chapter 16 of this group learning program, I'm going to teach you what is the ego and how to eliminate it, how to dissolve it through various tools and techniques. But again, if the Eightfold Path isn't well underway, an individual wouldn't be able to do that. So you need to first get the Eightfold Path well underway. But the conceit is part of that ego. Then there's something called restlessness. This is like the overactivity of the mind, the confusion, the distraction of the mind, that even when you get rid of central desire, there can be some underlying clinging, some kind of residual clinging that causes the mind to be overactive. If you've ever been sitting somewhere and you just kind of bob your knee, or you tap your foot, or you tap your fingers, or you tap a pencil, this is because your mind's restless. It's not the body that's doing that. The body is the employee. The mind is the boss. The boss is all restless, and the body, the employee, is just following along. So if you're like tapping your fingers or you're bobbing your knee, this is showing you that your mind is overactive. Or even your own thoughts, you can start to see that your mind is overactive. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have eliminated this restlessness of mind, and you'll be completely calm and stable and steady in the present moment, that you won't have this overactivity of the mind. Then there's the fetter of all fetters. This actual fetter is the reason why all the other ones actually exist. Most people refer to it as ignorance. I tend to use the phrase unknowing of true reality because people are translating the words of the Buddha into English. And this word ignorance is like a derogatory word. It's a degrading and diminishing word. And an enlightened being, and surely a Buddha, doesn't refer to people in degrading and diminishing ways. So the Buddha wouldn't have walked around calling people ignorant or stupid or a fool. You can see translations sometimes where people translate the Buddha talking this way. But this is an unenlightened being translating the words of a fully, perfectly enlightened Buddha, which isn't going to be 100% accurate. So a Buddha wouldn't refer to someone as stupid or a fool or as ignorant. But I use this word ignorance because you'll see it in a lot of different places and you'll actually know what people are talking about. What they're referring to is this misunderstanding, this confusion, this lack of wisdom, this unknowing of true reality, where the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. So for example, in the unenlightened state, the mind firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. You might firmly believe that right now. If you haven't learned the Four Noble Truths, the very first teaching of the Buddha, in a way that you can examine it and investigate it, that you can reflect on it to independently verify it, and you can practice it and actually see that it actually works, then you might believe that other people are causing you to be angry. That's part of the ignorance. That's part of the unknowing of true reality. And as long as you have that, you'll never be able to make your way to enlightenment. So that's why the goal of this path is to cultivate wisdom. You're never believing the teachings, because with belief, you don't know what's true and you don't know what's false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it, but you don't know the truth, and your mind can easily be shaken up. If any of you guys grew up with the idea of Santa Claus in your homes, I know I did, I grew up with this idea of Santa Claus and I believed in it. But at the age of 8, I found out that Santa Claus didn't exist. And boy, I was torn up inside. I was so angry. My parents had been lying to me all that time. My sister came and told me, like, David, I saw Mom and Dad eating the cookies and milk last night. It's not Santa Claus that's been giving us those presents. I was like, what? Right? I was really upset. I was rocked. My whole world was shaken up because I was believing something. But then I learned the truth that Santa Claus doesn't exist. And now your mind can't be shaken off of that. It doesn't matter how many songs you hear on the radio. It doesn't matter how many big men that you see in red suits with gray beards. You know that that's not Santa Claus. Your mind can't be shaken off of that because you know the truth, right? And it's the same thing that you need to get to with all these teachings of the Buddha, that you know the truth. And that's the wisdom that you cultivate through not believing his teachings, but through learning, examining, through reflecting to independently verify, and you practice and you see the transformation of your mind. And there's nothing that anybody could say to you that would convince you otherwise, because your mind is deeply seeing the truth that you've independently verified these teachings. Getting rid of this ignorance is not just an intellectual process, right? If you intellectually understand the teachings, that's a beginning. That's where you would like to start, intellectually understanding them. But to get rid of your ignorance, you need to actually practice the teachings. That's where you're actually eliminating your ignorance. Because growing up, we pretty much learned that it's unwise to drink drugs or to drink alcohol or to use drugs. We knew that intellectually, but we might have still did it because of our ignorance, because of our unknowing of true reality. We didn't realize that poison that we were putting into the body was affecting us in a negative way, and it degraded our life. We were just chasing those sensual desires, right? So intellectually, you can understand something, but if you're not actually practicing it, you still have ignorance in your mind. And this is one of the ways that people know when someone's actually enlightened, because they can see through their practice that they're making wise decisions based on that wisdom that they've cultivated. They're actually practicing the teachings. So the ignorance gets eliminated through your practice, but it needs to start with intellectual understanding of things like the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 Precepts, meditation training, the 7 Factors of Enlightenment, the natural law of Karma, the cycle of rebirth. All these different things are things that you learn, examine, investigate, that you reflect, independently verify on, and then you practice, and then you'll see the truth for yourself. Your mind will become more wise, and as you're becoming more wise, you'll be able to eradicate all these pollutions. So part of cultivating wisdom is to even know what these 10 fetters are, right? And you're cultivating that wisdom now through that. But then you need to practice. So this is the higher fetters. Do you guys have any questions on the higher fetters? Yes, please. While you're getting your mic, we have a question coming in on Zoom here. I'll let you get that. So there's a question here. Let's see. This is from Soho. Soho asks, Dear David, apologies. I've only just put this in the chat. It was meant to be sent earlier when you spoke about fear. On the topic of fear, I have fear of not being able to fall asleep, which is coming from my negative experience with it. And through this, my brain has come to learn associated with sleeplessness, difficulty, insomnia. Do you have any insight around letting go of this fear, as it seems to be what is triggering my anxiety around it? This is a long question, so please feel free to respond privately or at any time. Thank you, Ka. Okay, so I teach in chapter 17 how to eliminate fears, but you're going to need to know some underlying teachings. But in chapter 17 of this first book, you'll be able to learn that. Today, I'm just going to focus on these things. But yeah, if you would like to write me privately, you can write me privately and I will reply to you and help you to get access to the resource where I teach how to eliminate fear. And then, let's see, Jules. Soho, I am really interested in hearing David's response. Okay, so you're just kind of sharing some things. Okay, yeah. So if you guys would like to communicate privately, I'll help you guys to get access to the resources you need for that. So yes, ma'am, you have a question?
Oi, yeah. I'm a bit confused with a lot of advice there is. With feather number 1, there's a lot of advice of loving yourself or accepting your shadows. How is that possible if there's no self?
Yeah, so a lot of what you're going to hear in other places are exactly opposite of the teachings of the Buddha. And this is why you have a vast majority of people in the world that are angry and frustrated and hostile and bitter, and you see all kinds of problems in the world, because even when people are diving into the spiritual world, they're not actually understanding the true teachings of what it takes to be able to get the mind to experience enlightenment. So there's no aspect of this path that you need to know your true self, because as soon as you try to identify and cling to any of that stuff, as soon as it changes, you're going to be lost and confused. So it's a matter of understanding that there is a being here, that there is a physical body, there is a mind, there's a being here. I see a human being, but not identifying with it and clinging to any of it is who you are as a person. So you can get to the point where you remove all these labels out of the mind so that you don't have to identify with any of those labels. And now you can have the freedom to be able to navigate the world without this burden of carrying around these labels. And now you'll be so much more peaceful and joyful because of that. So when the Buddha is saying that there is no self, he's not saying that there's no being here. He's just advising you that it's unwise to cling to any of this as who you are as a person, because there's something called the five aggregates, and this is what an individual will tend to cling to. They will tend to cling to their physical form, which is the body. There are certain feelings that you experience, right? So you might cling to your feelings of pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. You might cling to your perceptions, which are your views and opinions about the world. Like depending on what political system you grew up in or that you've been around, you might view yourself as being one political affiliation or another, and you might identify with that as who you are. And now you might get angry and frustrated and argue with people based on that. Or you might cling to your choices and decisions. These are referred to as volitional formations. If you cling to your choices and decisions, I gave you that example with I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, right? Now your mind can't be peaceful and joyful because you feel this shame or this guilt. But there's other decisions you might cling to as well. And then there's the consciousness or the mind or the identity of I am American or I am Chinese or I am Spanish or any of these other things. The mind will cling to it. So the Buddha is not denying that there isn't a being here, because there is a being. He's just teaching you not to cling to any of the stuff, craving permanence, because as soon as you experience impermanence, that's where your mind will be shaken up. So it's a way to help you get to peace and joy by eliminating the clinging and craving for it to be permanent. Yep. Okay, so now that you guys are starting to understand the fetters a little bit, now let's talk about these 4 stages of enlightenment, because as you're eliminating these fetters, your mind moves through these 4 stages. Through the lifetime of the Buddha, they were referred to as stream enter, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. And then there's something called a Buddha, which I'll explain to you guys what that is. So these are the 4 stages of enlightenment. And they're referred to in this way for reasons, because like a stream enter, the reason why it's referred to that way is that just like a log enters the stream and it will eventually get to the ocean, it's only a matter of time. It's the same thing that once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. It's just a matter of time, either in this life or some future life. Or if you were a once returner, if you died in that stage of enlightenment, you're going to come back into the world one more time and get to enlightenment in that next life. A non-returner is an individual, if they die in that stage of enlightenment, they will be reborn into the heavenly realm and they will actually experience enlightenment from there. An arahant is an actual enlightened being. This is the way they refer to it during the lifetime of the Buddha, someone who completely purified their mind of the 10 fetters. So here you're starting to hear me talk about these realms a little bit, like being reborn and the realms. Remember, nothing in the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You can actually independently verify the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence as well. Hell, animal, afflicted spirits, human realm, and heavenly realm. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but as you progress on your journey on the path to enlightenment, you can gain that wisdom of how to actually verify that. So here's how an individual would move through these 4 stages. That once someone eliminates personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances, their mind is now in this first stage of enlightenment. And being in this first stage of enlightenment, you will have a significant decrease in your discontentedness. Whatever your discontent feelings were before you were on this path, once you get into this first stage of enlightenment, it's just going to be a mere fraction of that. You will notice a significant decrease in your discontentedness. And this is where you know with 100% certainty, and you've eliminated your doubt, you've seen this improvement to the condition of your mind. You're like, wow, these teachings are working, right? You're not enlightened yet, but there's been this significant improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. Then if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you will be reborn no more than 7 times before you actually get to enlightenment. So you could get to this first stage and then actually get to enlightenment in that life. But if you die in the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to need to come back, but you'll come back into the human world and you'll have continued opportunities to be able to get to enlightenment from there. This second stage of enlightenment is referred to as a once returner. You've already eliminated the first 3 fetters of personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances, but you have thinned out number 4 and 5. Thinning out sensual desire and ill will means that you're not having as much of that as you once did. So some people, what they notice when they're getting to this point is they notice they're not as interested in sex anymore. If you're noticing that, your mind is starting to thin out your sensual desire. They notice that their mind is not as angry and frustrated as it once was, right? Because if you think about when you were younger in life, you probably had a lot more anger and frustration. And then as you age and as you train your mind more, you'll notice a decrease in your ill will. Right? So this is what a person who's in the second stage of enlightenment will have accomplished, is they would have eliminated these first 3 and they thinned out number 4 and 5. And as a result, their discontentedness has also significantly reduced, even more so than this person in the first stage of enlightenment. And if someone dies in this stage of enlightenment, they will come back into the world one more time as a human being, and they will get to enlightenment in that life. So some of you guys might have been stream enters in your past life, or you might have been a once returner in your past life. And now's your opportunity to get to enlightenment in this life, right? So you don't know that necessarily yet. Then there's a third stage of enlightenment, referred to as a non-returner. This individual has eliminated the 5 lower fetters. This individual is experiencing discontentedness about once every 2 or 3 months, maybe once every 4, 5, 6 months. And when they do, not only is it infrequent that they're experiencing discontentedness, it's very insignificant. It maybe lasts for like 30 seconds to a minute, where they're just a little bit annoyed. And you might not even know it because they're only inwardly annoyed, and their mind knows exactly why that's occurring. They're able to easily cut that off and let it go internally. Outwardly, they might not even appear annoyed or frustrated or agitated at all. So this individual very infrequently is experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever because they've eliminated all of these 5 lower fetters. We refer to this person as a non-returner because if they die in this stage of enlightenment, they're not going to come back to this world. They're going to be reborn into the heavenly world and experience enlightenment from there. In this particular stage of enlightenment, the mind can become somewhat complacent because you're not experiencing much discontentedness. It's very infrequent and it's very insignificant. So when you're in this stage of enlightenment, you need to be vigilant. You need to continue to be determined and dedicated and diligent to be able to apply all aspects of the practice, realizing that you're not yet enlightened and you need some more work to be able to get to enlightenment. Because an individual who's actually gotten to enlightenment, they've eliminated all the 10 fetters. This individual is referred to as an arahant. This is how the Buddha would refer to them. Today, we'd probably just call this person an enlightened being or someone who's in the 4th stage of enlightenment. They're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. It will have been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They're not experiencing any discontentedness, not even the slightest little ickiness in the mind. Their mind will be focused and concentrated. They'll have clarity and deep memory. So this is what an individual will experience who's in the 4th stage of enlightenment. And they won't experience rebirth anywhere. This will be their last life. They will experience this mental state for the rest of this life. It's a permanent mental state. It's impossible, physically impossible for the mind to experience something like anger or frustration by the time you get to this particular stage of enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions on the 4 stages here? Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Hello. Okay. within the first two stages, so if you are in the human realm, is there a point when you realize enlightenment? Like, is there a moment where you feel the enlightenment, or how does one, if they're in the human realm, know that they've reached that enlightenment if their time has come?
Yeah, so it's not a moment in time that the mind is actually enlightened. These qualities of enlightenment start to gradually shine through. So if you could think about like the sun representing enlightenment, if there's clouds in front of the sun, that's the 10 pollutions. As you're starting to peel back the clouds, the rays of the sun start shining through. So we say attain enlightenment, but one of the ways to think about this is your mind's already enlightened. You just have pollutions that are hindering you from being able to experience that. So as you're starting to peel back those pollutions, you're starting to reduce them, that's where the qualities will gradually come in. So that's why like someone in the third stage of enlightenment, they will experience 3 months, sometimes 6 months of complete peace and joy. But if you think you're enlightened at that point, you're going to miss it when you actually have that little bit of discontentedness at the 6-month mark. So that's why I teach people, don't ever convince yourself that you're enlightened. Just always and forever cultivate your mind, cultivate wisdom. So then when you experience that little bit of ickiness after 6 months, you can notice it and you can stomp it out and you can address it. But you will know that you're enlightened, but it's not a moment in time. It's a gradual progression where the mind gradually starts to experience these qualities. But when you get to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you haven't seen any discontentedness whatsoever, you'll know that your mind is enlightened. But it's best to just not convince yourself of it and just continue to grow and develop. Yeah. All right. So now there's something called a Buddha, which is an individual who's an arahant. They are an enlightened being. They've completely purified their mind of the 10 fetters, but they've done so in a unique way. This is a very rare type of individual that only exists in the world every so often. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago, and there hasn't been an individual like this since that time frame that the world's currently aware of. So what a Buddha is someone who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. This is a very rare thing. There's some places that will teach you that everybody's a Buddha. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never said that. People might say that today, but the Buddha never actually said that whatsoever. He talks about how rare it is for someone to actually be a Buddha. So if somebody trains their mind and gets to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, this individual meets the first criteria of what it takes to be a Buddha. Then an individual who's an actual Buddha will independently share their teachings that they've discovered, those independently discovered teachings. They will share them for the rest of their life. From the time that they get to enlightenment, for the rest of their life, they will share their teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then the third criteria is that they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three main criteria of what makes a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. There's some other criteria as well. They have a deep, profound memory to be able to recall countless details about their current life and their past lives too. This is how they actually get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Where, like, for example, your mind has a certain limited capacity. It's like a hard drive. Like, say you have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte or something like this. Well, when you are kind of reaching a certain capacity, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. That's why, like, in the last 5 years or so, you can kind of remember, the last 5 or 10 years, what you've been up to and what you've been doing in life. But if you think back to your childhood, you just have spotty memories because you've had to delete those files in order to store these new files that you're experiencing. Where an individual who's going to get to enlightenment as a Buddha, they don't have that limited capacity. They have an unlimited capacity to remember details from their current life and their past lives, and they collect up all that wisdom to be able to get to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then an individual who's a Buddha can quickly determine the condition of another person's mind through spending time with that person, they can see these fetters in that person's mind. And then they're able to offer that person teachings that would actually be able to help them to overcome those challenges within their own mind. Now, they wouldn't just kind of peer into somebody's life and start giving unsolicited guidance, right? If they're like at a restaurant and they hear somebody talking with conceit, they're not just going to be like, hey, you're talking with conceit, you should do this and you should do that. That would be unwise to do that. So a Buddha would only use this quality with their students. And this is one of the things that makes them so effective at helping countless people get to enlightenment, is that they can observe the quality of their students' mind and then offer them teachings that are going to help them to overcome that. Then a Buddha is a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, that's what they're practicing as well. An individual who's this wise to get to enlightenment by themselves, they also understand that they're teaching through their spoken words, but they're also teaching through their actions as well. So they ensure that whatever they're teaching, they also practice that as well. That's what led to their enlightenment. And now they just practice that all the time, effortlessly. It's not even effort to put in to actually practice the teachings. Once your mind's been essentially upgraded, like you've upgraded the operating system of your computer, your mind just functions through that new wisdom. It's not an effort any longer. On your way to enlightenment, there's a certain challenge, there's certain struggles that you're going to meet on your way to enlightenment. But having gotten to enlightenment, your mind will be functioning effortlessly through those teachings. So a Buddha will be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, they're also practicing that through their day-to-day actions as well. We call this person a fully, perfectly enlightened one, or a Buddha. The reason why we refer to them in this way is because if you learn from a teacher who's not a Buddha, for example, you're going to accumulate a certain amount of baggage, right? There are certain things that this teacher might have been teaching you that didn't actually lead to your enlightenment, and you're still doing those things just out of respect for your teacher. So maybe 80-90% of the things that you've been doing actually led to your enlightenment. But there's maybe 5, 10, 15, 20% of things that you're doing that actually didn't lead to your enlightenment, but you don't necessarily know that because you're just kind of doing these things out of respect for your teacher. So an individual who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, they don't have that. So they don't have this extra baggage around. So we refer to them as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. That's where this comes from, or a Buddha. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, we have a question coming in on Zoom. Let's see. This is from Jules. If I practiced personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior from age 0 to 50 and only just started practicing the teachings of the Buddha, does this mean I'm a stream enterer? Or could I have been once returner, having picked up the practice again at age 50 from the past life? So if someone was a stream enterer in the past and they died, they're not reborn as a stream enterer. You're still going to have all these 10 fetters in your mind, but the individual will make their way back to the teachings more readily, and they will find it easier to practice the teachings because they've cultivated wisdom in a past life, and that some of that wisdom is going to be on board. So they're going to make their way back to the teachings more readily, and now they need to practice the teachings to be able to get back to stream enterer and beyond, if that's what they're going to do in this particular lifetime. Okay, so let me check YouTube and Facebook. All right, I don't see any questions here either. So I'm going to in class by sharing something with you guys that about temples, and then I'm going to invite you guys to participate in something if you'd like. It's really up to you. About once every 3 months, we actually do this activity at the end of class that you guys are invited to participate in if you like. But first, let me share with you guys what a temple is and why we do this activity. Essentially, what a temple is, the way that I view it, is it's like a womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the best place for a being to grow and develop and to become a better and better human being. Without the womb of a woman, we wouldn't actually be able to come into the world in the way that we do, right? So a temple is essentially the same thing. It's like the womb of a woman where we enter into the temple and we grow and develop and we become a better and better person, a better and better human being. That's what it means to progress on the path to enlightenment. And a temple is created by all of us. This temple doesn't belong to anybody. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to the monks. It was something that the Thai people have created all throughout their country. They've created essentially a mental health network that is self-funded and self-supported, that we all kind of contribute to creating this mental health network, that now people can enter in and out of this womb in order to be able to grow and learn and develop to be a better and better individual. So if someone's having challenges with their personal life or their professional life, they can enter into this womb for whatever amount of time, whether it's a few hours or a few days or however long, to be able to learn and grow and develop. And that all gets created by all of us coming together and choosing to create an environment where people have that opportunity. So at one time, this land would have been owned by a Thai person, and they would have experienced a certain amount of progress and help with the teachings of the Buddha, and they would have donated it for other people to be able to learn and grow and develop. And then other people would have donated resources and supplies to build all these different buildings and things like this. So we've got this temple here that is a little bit over 500 years old, and it's been kind of nurtured and grown and developed by countless people over this 500-year history of people that will never even know all their names. And that's the only reason why we're able to sit here today and share these teachings in a place like this. So what we do every 3 months is we do a temple cleanup day where we come together, and if you would like to contribute and spend time, you're more than welcome to, where we kind of get out all the tools and supplies and the mops and different things, and we roll back the carpets and we dust, and we go outside in the temple at large and kind of pull weeds and clean things and just kind of really spruce up the temple so that, we can continue to enjoy coming here and other people can as well. So we're kind of nurturing this womb by every 3 months doing this deep cleaning. There's regular ongoing cleaning for this classroom that we do and outside throughout the month, but every 3 months we kind of do this deep kind of spring cleaning. So if you would like to participate in this temple cleanup day, you're more than welcome to stick around, and you can get involved with what we're going to be doing. There's going to be a person here inside the classroom. I think Joe volunteered to do that. So he's going to be here. Anybody inside that would like to team up with Joe to sweep and vacuum and dust and clean bathrooms and move books and all that kind of stuff, you can hang out here and help Joe to kind of clean up the inside. Steve is going to be right outside the classroom where like the shoes and the lounge and all that stuff is. He's going to hook up the hose and be spraying some water around and scrubbing the tiles and scrubbing the shoe boxes and all these kinds of things and really kind of sprucing up the little lounge outside. And then I'm going to be outside in the temple at large with brooms and different tools and gloves and stuff like that, and pulling weeds and sweeping, getting rid of the leaves and cleaning up some of the drainage and stuff like that. So if you'd like to help me, I'll be out there doing that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to team up with any of these people, you're more than welcome to contribute. There's no expectation that you would do this, but if you would like to do it, there's this opportunity for you to be able to do it. And if you're choosing to leave, that's completely fine. I really appreciate that you were here to be interested to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. It's wonderful to share the teachings with anybody, and whatever you choose to do, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. And for those of you guys that are going to stick around, we'll get to hang out and have fun and enjoy cleaning up the temple and contributing to developing this womb and helping more and more people to come in and be able to experience the niceness of the temple. So whatever you choose to do today, whether it's stay or whether it's leave, I just would like to thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in learning the teachings of the Buddha, and have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee-kap. Sawadee-kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.